So today we're going to start something new. We're going to do a mini series on creating an entire application in one go, hopefully over the weekend. This is going to include a brand new application that will be fully made from scratch, working, released, and I'll be using it every day. We'll include an installer as well, so we're going to use Avalonia Parcel, which is part of the Accelerate package. We can use it free for a single Windows installer, which is all we need. And the idea will be to build everything from scratch, the icons, the app, the solution from the start. And we're going to start with all the latest stuff. So this is like a nice mini series to create an app that's actually going to be used and see the entire dev lifecycle, hopefully in one weekend. So let's just jump in. For those of you that don't know, I also do live streaming most days on something called Retro 6, which is my retro gaming channel where I actually run a business and repair retro consoles. What I've done here is taken a screenshot, and this is as far as I've got because I want to make this app live. So what I've done is taken a screenshot of one of the live streams of me repairing some Game Gears, and I've overlaid these two little things here. So this is the live stream, just a screen capture. And this is some UI. I've just drawn in this Affinity program. So let me show you where to begin. Firstly, if you haven't got anything, you can install JetBrains Rider, which is the one I'd recommend for obviously development in Avalonia. You can just go to jetbrains.com/rider and install that. There's also the brand new Visual Studio 2026. I've just given this a go, and unfortunately, even though the actual program itself is pretty good, I still can't get over the distinctive, horrible UI compared to Rider. Now I'm used to Rider's UI, there's just no going back. I've spent 3 hours this morning trying to remake themes, change font styles, change keyboard mapping, everything I can to make Visual Studio usable. But unfortunately, once you've seen Rider, I just cannot go back. So here's Rider, for example. Nice padding, nice UI around the menus. The font's nice. The contrast is nice. All this just looks good. Open up Visual 2026 and look at this. So just look at the difference. And this is the best I can get it as well. I've tried custom themes. I've tried scaling fonts. The problem you have with font scaling is if you do, say, font and color, and you scale the environment, say, which is the only way you can do it, and scale it up, you get this, which now look at the top menu, it's lost all its padding compared to Rider, which has got nice padding. So this now looks like something that, a first year junior dev would build. The scale in the UI is still so archaic compared to this. And unfortunately, I'm one that loves nice looking UI. I'd pick that over features in most cases. And I just can't get used to this. The font in here is terrible, so we can zoom in and out. But again, look at the difference. It just looks nice. So I've changed the fonts to match as well. This is an Inter font, and it still doesn't look as good, and it's the same font. I might have actually reset the font since then, but I've tried all the fonts, and I just can't get this to look like I want to work in it. It's horrible. Combine that with things like shortcuts don't work, so Alt left and right's been reassigned for navigation. Reassigning keyboards also doesn't work. So long story short, if you like Visual Studio, it's fine. I just cannot get used to it anymore. Now I've got Rider and these nice visuals and this bubbly UI, I can't go back. So I'll be using Rider. We can download either. Then what you want to download as well is Affinity. This is now completely free. So just come to affinity.studio, download it for whichever platform you want, and this is what we're going to make the icons in. And then finally, because this is starting afresh, I'm presuming you have no knowledge yet of Avalonia, and we're going to make this application from scratch. If you search avalonia.net templates, you'll find this repository, and you can type this, .NET new install Avalonia templates. Just start up a command line, paste that in, press enter, and it will install them. And you can see this is now upgraded mine because they were out of date, and it's installed the newer ones. This will allow us now to make an Avalonia app, which is what we want. So with those installed, before we get into coding, let's first take a look at how I've made this UI and what it's meant to do. So this is the bench that you see. So this is the live stream. You can see the benches there, and where this rack of tissue paper here is, I've now put this multimeter. And it's because when I'm doing repairs, I often want to show the voltage in whatever I'm measuring, or the current, or the resistance, and I want to show it on screen. So normally you can see the bottom left here, this Fluke multimeter. You can't really show that on screen easy. So I've got this Rigel one instead. And I've had this for a while, but I've realized you can integrate it into the PC software. Unfortunately, Rigel want to sell us software for hundreds of pounds, and it's archaic, doesn't look good, and is a really old installer. So I've done some research, and I'm 99% confident we can make this work without paying for software. And not only that, we can integrate it into Avalonia, and then do, hopefully, this kind of overlay. So we can have a live overlay that we fully control. So we can have like the multimeter updating, the colors changing based on voltage. I could even have it play sounds in the stream or show a certain camera if something happens. We're going to have complete control here because we're making it. So what I want to do is have ultimately an application that runs in Windows, and in OBS or Streamlabs, I'm going to capture the window of that application, so the Avalonia application, hide the background, so we'll just make the background a certain color, and we can then overlay what appear to be floating icons in the application or in the live stream. So that's the goal, and all it means is we need to make an application with windows in where we can show a certain portion of the window. All I want is one. So in these overlays, you wouldn't have any of these. You'd have just one overlay like this. And then this control over here that I've started making, this would be a bunch of buttons which match the buttons on here. So if we were to zoom in, you can see my multimeter has these buttons. So voltage DC, voltage AC, current DC and AC, resistance, capacitor, continuity, diode, frequency, and sensor is temperature. So that's what these are then. You've got voltage, DC, AC, current, DC, AC, resistance, capacitance, continuity, temperature, and a frequency. And we're actually missing a diode one there. Why is the diode one missing? Oh, diode one's been dragged over here. So we have the diode mode here as well. So what it will be is, in the application, this won't necessarily be shown. This won't be visible on stream. But this will be something in the application where we will click these buttons to change the mode. So the green highlighted mode here to go into a certain mode, whether you want to measure voltage or resistance or current, anything like that. You can click these buttons and we want to control the multimeter and change the mode. And then as we change the mode, say we click into voltage AC like this is indicating as if we're in voltage AC, or let's say we clicked the current DC, we'd hide that and show this, and it would be over here. So this would like stay in one position. We're just going to change the actual visual like this as we change modes. So there's always one place to look because you can't be in multiple modes at once. So you can't have this showing two things. It's one multimeter. But just for visual, so I could get an idea of what they'd all look like, I just stack them all in a line like this. So that's the goal. That's what we want to do. It should be pretty easy from an Avalonia standpoint. The UI is certainly going to be very easy. All we've got to do is really a box like this with colors and values and some buttons. So the UI should be nice and simple, but then the code behind is going to be the more complicated bit. So the goal of this is to get this done, hopefully within this weekend. I'm not going to have any specific times for the videos. I'm just going to probably do roughly an hour per video, go at it as we do and see where we get to. So the first thing I'd want to do is remake this because obviously you guys haven't seen how I've made this and drawn this. So let me just show you how simple this is. If you install Affinity, you've now got the options for vector, pixel, and layout all in one application and some AI. All I want to do is get a visual like this. So what I did is went to vector, go down to here to rectangle. They've got a rounded rectangle, click and drag. Now we have a rectangle. This is obviously very similar to Avalonia's UI as well. It's vector based and you have things like this, rectangles, which are borders and corner radius. We can change the color over here on the right side. So we'll change that to just black. We have a stroke here, so we can change that to say red. And then in the stroke tab here, we can change the thickness. So that's all it is. Nice, simple outline box. For the font, you can come over here to text. Now there's two texts. There's one in a frame, which is like a text box, and there's an artistic tool to call, which is just typing text, which is what I prefer. So in here, I just made some font. The font I've chosen is Tahoma. I think Tahoma works nicely, but you can obviously mess with any font you want. So if you zoomed out, moved to the side, you can kind of scroll through and get a visual for what fonts you might like. We can obviously change this in code as well. Then you set the color over here. So we can set the font color to whatever we like. And the goal will be, because there's key voltages when I'm measuring, things like 3.3, 5 volt, 10 volt, 12 volt, I'm going to change the color of this as we go. So based on the voltage number, we're going to actually change the color of the UI and fade it nicely with animation. So it's going to look nice, and at a glance we can see, say this color is a green, we know it's say 3, under say 3.5 volts. As it gets to 5, it can go to like yellow. As it gets above say 6 or 7, it can start going to darker colors. And say when it gets above 10 volts, we turn it red. So even at a glance, we could see what the voltage is. And then again, similar to the top, I just made a copy of this, changed it to white, reduced it in size, made the font italic, which by the looks of it, I didn't use the same font for the title. I've used Acco Pro, but I could do with probably, well, I think we've got Acco Pro in the batch process code, so we can probably just use Acco Pro. And I'll just use, it doesn't look like I've even got italic installed. Yep, so it's bold, condensed italic I've used. And then I've just put something like multimeter. And that's pretty much the UI. And then these are just fonts again. I've just made font and DC as 2 fonts. And that's literally all there is to it to make the visual that I want. So that's how I've made this. Just a literal, nice, simple visual. And then the slightly more complicated thing is I've made all these icons. So what we've done for the icons, these are all vector. It's just when you're zooming in, because of the size of the document, it renders them as if they're pixels, but these are curves. So if you go in, you can see the curve being outlined. I think you can press Control Y as well to see the outline of vectors. So as you zoom out, you can see what vector patterns there are. And this is very easy. So you can, oh, now it's actually decided to render correctly. Maybe that was a render issue. We can now make these fonts. So all I did was make a text again, put, say, the letter V. This is probably Tahoma. I've left it as, is it Tahoma? Yeah, Tahoma. I've probably done that with bold, scaled it down, and maybe dragged it out. Yeah, so you can see it was Tahoma, and I've just scaled it manually. Then what I've done to round the corners, go to vector, convert to curves, and now we have this option here for corners. We can select all of the points you want to curve them all, click on one and drag, and you can round the font. So you could go extreme like this and make a big curvy one, or you could just curve it slightly, and that's literally what I've done. And then you could also change this one on its own because you don't want that as curvy. And there's basically what I've done for that. To make the eye, you'd think I'd used an eye, but all I did was go to the rounded rectangle, click and drag. This is saved the default color from before, so we'll come up here, remove the outline, set the inner to white, and then here we now have a rectangle. So I just basically made a rectangle, roughly that size. Corner radius up here, can make the rounded corners bigger. And then I hold Alt and drag, and then hold Shift to keep it in line, and let go. Alt, click, drag, Shift to keep it in line, click here, hold Shift to lock the rotation, and then I just manually scaled it like this. And there was the eye. I'll then select all 3 by holding Shift, go up here to add to turn them all into one object, and there's the eye. And then similar for these rounded corners inside, vector, oh, it's already a curve, so we don't need to convert it to curve. You can just go straight to the command here for rounded corners, select just these 4 points and curve them. And there's the eye. So this is all skills in really graphic design. It's not really for developers and coding, but this is how I've made these icons. If you wanted to learn more about these, I could potentially do a video on graphic design, but they're all made the same. So this point, for example, is just a pen tool. And again, it just relies on a few more features. And all I've done is gone click, across, up, down, across, something like that. Made a curve here, gone to the stroke, made it white, made it whatever thickness I want, say about there. Vector, and in this case I need to expand the stroke because that's an outline, and now we have the outlined object. And then again, curve the corners, and I can round corners off. So you get the idea. It's all just different techniques of making shapes. This one was actually a font, so you can actually get a predefined ASCII code to make the ohms symbol. So I didn't even have to make that one. I pretty much just used the ASCII code and a font and then converted it to a curve. Once we've got these now, we need to export them to SVGs to use in Avalonia. So we'll leave that until we get to that stage, which won't be far off. But what we'll first do now is, the fact we've got this file ready, we can export these icons, which is all we really need. And this UI will be made in Rider itself in Avalonia app. So let's now jump in to making the blank app ready to use. So we know what we're doing, which is good. Once you know your goal, this becomes a lot easier. So if we open a command line, just type .NET new and then a list if we're unsure. You can see all the templates installed. We should have Avalonia here. There we go. We want the avalonia.mvvm. So we will just do a new project. So first we'll do make dir to make a directory, and we'll call this, I'm going to call this stream electronics, because it's going to be effectively linking in with not only my multimeter, but hopefully eventually the hot air station and soldering iron as well. So I'm going to call this stream electronics. We'll cd into that. You can do this all in Windows if you like. And now in here we'll do .NET new, paste in Avalonia MVVM app, and the app wants to also be called stream electronics. We probably could have done that without making the folder, because I'm pretty sure that's going to make a folder. That should have been .NET. Oh, and that's also meant to be the -O for naming the project. And that's made us this folder inside of here. So I'm just going to cut that out and paste it onto the desktop for now. And we'll have to probably close down this window because that's locking it. There we go. And now we have the folder that's created. You can see it made a folder for us, so we didn't need to make that directory. So I'm just going to cut everything out, paste it into the top level. And now we have hopefully a blank project that we can open in Rider. So I'm going to open this. You can see I've literally just installed Visual Studio to test it. Don't like it, so I'm going to stick with Rider. You'll get this warning sometimes. Trust and open. It's just protection that you know the code you're opening is safe. And now we're in here. This should be a completely fresh project. So it's asking us to exclude this folder from Windows Defender, so it doesn't keep scanning every time we're compiling. And if we just try to build first, let's see if this thing even builds and runs. And then we can get on with the UI, which, like I say, should be pretty straightforward. This shouldn't be hard at all. And there we go. That's up and running. So we have the basic. Oh, it's nice. They've actually included a default icon now as well in the Avalonia templates. So before this was just a non-existent icon. So we'll make the icon as well, which I think will make a little thunderbolt. So in fact, let's start with that. It's a nice, easy place to start. We will open then, in that case, the Affinity. So let's leave Rider running. Open Affinity. And I'm just going to search for a thunderbolt and just pick one I like the look of. So we want it to be friendly. We could also do, I kind of like this style in these two colors, maybe even the little shadow, but I like a bit more like this shape, a kind of combo between all of them. So if we just screenshot that, we'll make a new document again so we can see easier, paste that as a reference. And then I kind of like this. See, they've got loads of options here, but they're a bit too aggressive. I want a kind of soft and big bubbly icon. Paste this in. So these are my two references that I like. You'll see how easy this is to make now. I definitely like this color scheme. I almost like that, but it doesn't quite look like a Thunderbolt, whereas this one, in fact, do either of them look like Thunderbolts? I don't know whether I want a different shape. You almost want the three. But then having three, I think having 3 lines looks too aggressive. That's a bit more exaggerated. I almost like the 3D effect as well. We might do that, but I'm not sure. I like the flat. But considering we're going to make this, we've obviously got flexibility. Oh, I kind of like that, an odd shape one. Not the style of it, just the shape. I'm thinking more it gives it a bit of a feature as well. That it's not just a generic icon. It has a little bit of feature to it. See, yeah, it doesn't look like a lightning bolt. So I think it has to be the double, but we'll play with the shape. It's easy to drag the shape around, maybe. And we've got to bear in mind this also wants to be an icon so you can see it clear. So I'm actually going to make the background black. Yeah, so let's make a, I'm not sure yet, we'll go with this. We'll go on to vector, we'll make a rectangle, make it rounded for now, hold shift to keep it locked. Doesn't matter about the size, we can scale this because it's vector. Go to color, remove the stroke, and make the background pure black. And then in here we want our icon. I do like this little shadow, so I'm just going to go into this tool here, ellipse, click, drag, and if I hold shift, it scales uniformly, which we don't want. We want to make a purposeful ellipse. If you hold control, it scales from the center. So you can do a combination of shift and control to effectively make a circle from the center point. I just want to hold control to make an ellipse. I want it to be about that big, and then change the color to just a nice little shadow like that. And then for the lightning bolt, we can literally trace around these if we want for the shapes. We want our own shape, but you can be roughly there. So if we click the pen tool, click roughly at the points, like so, literally very roughly, doesn't matter. Go back up to the arrow, move this over, scale it down some. Almost want to make it a bit fatter. And then the first thing we want to do is get this nice yellow color. I like that yellow color. And you can see the problem we have is it's quite fat, so we almost want to bring it into the shadow. And then now I don't like the shadow because it's on. So maybe the shadow comes further down, goes a bit darker, like that. We definitely want to soften these so we can round the corners as we know how to do already. Like so. And then we can now click this tool here if you want to now move the points, called the node tool. You can click the arrow and you can just drag these nodes around to reshape. So we can reshape this lightning bolt however we want. And I think the key to the lightning bolt is almost these 4 points would probably be aligned. So you can select all 4 points, go up to here, click this little align, and then make them all say match at the top. And then you can just drag them all down by selecting them and moving them down. That's one way of like aligning them. I kind of don't like the alignment though, and I'm not a fan of the overall shape. So obviously we've kind of lost the lightning shape there, and it just doesn't quite look right. So we could move this down if we wanted, put it over the top, and fade it a little bit, so you can kind of overlay and see where it is. We could select our lightning again, click the little node tool, drag this up to a similar point, and let's reshape it based on a similar shape to this one. So something like that. Now we have that shape, click the move tool again, resize in general. And you can see, again, I don't really like that shape. So we're not really getting a shape I like as such. Maybe it's because we need the shading to give us some visuals. I think that going up there is a bit better. Maybe that coming into there. There we go, that's actually getting closer. That's more like a lightning bolt now. Something slightly out with position now. This looks a bit fat. Yeah, very close. I think the key is making these two align and making these two maybe align so that you've got a kind of consistent flow of lines through. So you can see what I'm meaning by that is, can I draw just a line? Where's my tools? Oh, can't draw a line. What I'm meaning is basically this line through here wants to be almost in line. The same for like this line here and this line. Ignore the double lines, but the line's basically cutting through. So it's almost like if we drew a rectangle and we were to place it in line with, you know, this line here, for example, like, you know, roughly like that, this line would want to be about in line. I think that's what the eye is telling us, that this would want to be in line, and so would this. And then the same for this line here. I think if that was in line with it, then this one would want to be in line, and you can see that's quite far out. So that one would probably want to be like there. Then if we look at that now, yeah, you can see that looks more, there's something about that consistency with the shape that makes it look good. And then I think we definitely need some shading or some pattern. So we can use a mask and a gradient to do this, and it can still be imported as SVG. So one thing we could do is gradient this slightly. So we can do, instead of using gradients down here, you want to do in the fill up here, click gradient, and now we can apply a slight gradient here. So the original's gone with like a darker yellow, so it's gone slightly more into the orange, I'd say, like that. We maybe want to go slightly into the lighter color. I think I prefer a white. And now we want another pattern cutting through, which, to be honest, is almost, if we duplicate that with Control and J, drag it up to maybe here, and we can probably just move them points to come down to, say, there, up to there, and that's probably where we want it. Now what we want to do is make this a mask of the other one. So we'll have to go onto the right side layer. This is the bottom one. So this one here is the main shape. We want to Control J to duplicate that. We could name this mask if we wanted. We'll purposely change it. We'll purposely change this just to white a minute so we can see the difference. And then if we show this layer above, this is going to be the inner shadow, I guess. We can then drag and drop this onto the word mask, and it'll turn it into a mask. Then you can click the mask itself and make sure that the set fill color is nothing, so it doesn't actually add color to it. And now we have, although it's hard to tell, we have the inner shadow that we can now style with a gradient up here. We can go to, say, a deep orange, and we can get this gradient being added. And I like that. I quite like that, actually. I was about to say I like that, but it's a bit too bright. But I kind of like that brightness. I think if anything, if we click the main one, this maybe wants to have a bit of yellow in it, not just pure white, maybe. And then even this one maybe wants to be. No, I think the pure yellow for that was good. So whiteness. Oh, we could have like a dark, almost go a dark red. Oh, yeah. How about we do a dark color like that, and then the shadow is actually the lighter color. Now I like that, but it's lost. It's more like fire now. So I do like the shading. So maybe we, just for a visual, then I think we're good with these now. We can delete them. Kind of like what we've got here visually. Maybe move that down a bit. I'm thinking because this is all vector as well, bear in mind this is scalable, we could even add like a 3D or a border to it. You could do a simple thing, duplicate, in fact, instead of calling this polyline, let's call this bolt. And then this is bolt shadow mask and inner shadow. If we duplicate the bolt, put it underneath, drag it maybe across and down, and we could, the bolt's actually got a stroke of black on. So you can see the stroke of black is expanding, but the shadow isn't capturing that. So you almost want the stroke to not be on the bolt, you'd almost want it to be on the bolt mask. I guess you could do like an outline there, and then the underlying one, the drop shadow, could be any color. So we could have pure white, just completely, like not a gradient. Or we could have the original colors. You could even have the stroke color instead of being black. This could be a gradient if we wanted. And have the stroke color an actual yellow as well to give it a highlight. So I kind of like the drop shadow, but I don't like the color. I think it needs to be a bit darker, maybe a little bit red. See, I'm liking the red, but it's going away from the yellow, the point of the icon. But I do like that. And now it's just the outline again. And we could play with this all day. We could always come back and change it, but we'd like to get this somewhere like where we'd actually want to see it. Can we flip these around instead? Or do a multi-gradient? Give it like a bit more of a metallic shine. That's quite nice. Yeah. And then what about finally the background? Do we gradient that as well? And I'm doing this because mainly everything's always flat these days. So I'd like to have a little bit of style. It would be nice to have some kind of style instead of it just always being, everything being flat. And then maybe do we just get rid of the shadow? Oh no, without the shadow, that top looks massive. Yeah, the shadow adds to it. You don't want it on because the bolt doesn't look floating then. Maybe a little bit thinner. Yeah, that a little bit thinner. Same again. Do we add another gradient? You want to be careful you don't do too many gradients, but so far I'm quite liking this. I don't think it's that bad at all, really. Yes, no. Maybe fade it like that. Can't make my mind up with that shadow. I like the shadow. I just can't make my mind up with it. Whether it might be too much and lost in detail when it's smaller. We might have to ignore that. So I'm going to select all 3 bolts, Control G to group them. So we can move this as a whole now. We might as well center it over here. And then we can scale this with clicking there, Control and Shift to scale freely, but I can kind of expand it and try and make it almost fill a rectangle nicely. No, so we want to scale it uniformly. So we'll just hold Control only. I think that'd be it. That's a uniform bolt. But I do definitely prefer it with that shadow. I just think in a toolbar at the bottom, that's going to not look centered. So I think if we're going to keep the shadow, this would have to be, we'd have to group them again because we undid. Select the rectangle and the bolt and align them central overall. So that bolt is now technically center of the entire shape, but then this doesn't look right because it's there. It's so close. Maybe slightly misalign it and do that. There we go. That's better. Really thin shadow and a bolt. So I think that'll do us for the icon. We could remove the background. Oh, I like it on white. Let's have a look. And just do like a background as if the app's dark and that's sitting on top to give us a visual. I don't know whether just leave it transparent and let the, let's just leave it all transparent. So let's leave that background off completely. There's our little shape. So we can grab this, group it, scale it however we like. But you'll notice when we scale, see those curves shaping and not scaling with the object. So we need to be careful of that, and we need to go into all 3 of these shapes, and you can do vector convert to curves, and that will set the curves permanently. Now we're happy. So now if we scale this entire object up, everything scales as we want it to. So you zoom in, but then you can see the stroke isn't scaling with the object either. So if we go into these, we have a stroke on the bolt mask. So we'll go to stroke here and click scale with object. And now can we, oh, we've noticed we've actually got a scale on the drop shadow. So let's remove that. And now we can drag this, zoom in. Almost, we haven't converted the curves of the background now. So this background wave, which is in a shadow here, that mustn't have converted to curves. Now it is. And the reason I'm doing this is because when this goes into an application and scales automatically, it might not look correct. Whereas now you can see, no matter how we scale it, it's scaling everything uniformly. And this is going to be a pure SVG now. So we'll be able to scale this and use this everywhere. So what we'll do is we'll make the artboard, this actual outline, or the document effectively, document setup. We go to pixels at the minute, which doesn't matter because it's basically a SVG, and it's set to 2K. So it really doesn't matter for an SVG, but let's just go to the very edge, and then you can see the very edge there is almost there. So we'll bring this in just slightly, and then we'll center it up here, and that's our icon. Or we might want to be honest, what we probably want to do is bring this in slightly and then center it over both. There we go. So it's more like how it would actually look in an icon. We'll save this. So file save. I'm going to call this bolt icon. And then what we need to do now is export it as an SVG. So if we click the top right, go down to here, we go to SVG for export. Whole document here, make sure that's selected. You can click advanced for some options. And you can see in here, you can have don't export hidden layers, rasterize unsupported. We want to rasterize nothing. So we want to make sure that what we export and see is fully vectorized. If you select rasterize unsupported properties, you might think it's an SVG, but it's actually pixelated. So if we purposely select nothing, we'll see if it comes out correct. Downsample images doesn't matter because there's none. Above DPI, that it won't matter because there isn't any. Same with JPEG compression, there's nothing getting compressed, so we're fine. I always like to select export text as curves in case there's any text in there. Same with flatten transforms. But one thing I do is I uncheck relative coordinates because that can mess up some SVG imports. So that's the option I'm going to use. We're going to click Show in Explorer and export. Go to desktop and export a bolt icon. And now hopefully if we open this in Chrome or in Microsoft Edge in this case, there's our lovely little icon we just made. So now we have a perfect SVG icon. Let's see if we can import this into our project. So we'll copy the bolt icon, go into here, into assets, and there's an icon already. So if we paste this in, we probably want to make an icon from it as well as an SVG. You can use, and you want to use, programs to convert SVGs to icons because the icons can have multiple different formats inside. The best one I find is IcoFX. It's been around for years and it's still the best. So if we download, I think I've got keys to this as well. Whether it's for the latest version is another story, but let's install this first. And then in here, if I click register, and yep, I have a valid license still. I brought this years ago. And now what we could do is open an existing one. Take a look at Avalonia's icon. And you can see in here, they have all the different icons from 16 up to 256. So we want that as well. So we will close that. We'll do extract icon from files, SVG, create a Windows icon from the image, and boom, there we go. So you can see it's tried to make it, but if you look at the top, it's actually just about cut off our SVG. So it's cut off the top of the lightning bolt, which we don't want it to do. So what we'll actually do in this case, because the icon is literally a fixed pixel, it doesn't have SVG data in it, is basically a bunch of PNGs in a sense, just a bunch of pixel data. And the fact it's just not scaling right, we'll go into Affinity and we'll export this as a PNG. So if we go to the export at the top right, change this to, where's PNG? I think it's at the top. Click PNG, everything can stay standard. Just click export. We'll put it in the same place. So in here in assets, and we'll call this bolt icon again. That will give us a PNG, and it's got a white background. So the thing is, we want probably, do we want a background? We don't. So we need to remove that background. You can see there is no background here though, but the key will be document and then setup, document setup, or it's actually got a shortcut here now for transparent background. And if we export that again, it will then have the transparent background. So now we can go back into here, close this, do extract icons from file, select the PNG, create a Windows icon from it. The imported is larger than canvas, so we want to resize image. And there we go. It's now resized it with a nice little padding around the icon. And if we take a look at Avalonia's, you can see they also have a padding. So it's expected in icons to have that bit of padding. We can now do File, Save As, and we have ourselves a nice little icon. So this will be the bolt icon. We'll leave Avalonia's in there just for the sake for now. Close. I think we can close all this down. So that's now fine. We will save because we've made a transparent background. We'll come back to this visual after then. And now in here, all we should have to do is check the Avalonia icon. Right click, Properties. You can see it's set to Avalonia resource, and that's it. So let's just check. These should automatically all be the same. Avalonia resource, so they're all fine. And then if we just search for Control Shift and F, Avalonia logo, we should be able to find where it's been used. Apparently nowhere. There we go, click Solution. It's only used in one place, which is here. So this can be bolt icon. If we compile now and run, yeah, there we go. You can see we've got a nice little icon there. And even though my toolbar's out of the way, let me just screenshot the toolbar so you can see. Toolbar, that took ages to get. So you can see there, zoomed in, but we have a nice little transparent icon that looks good when it's in the toolbar. So that was obviously quite a bit of work, but it's important to get your icon, I think, in early. If we tab as well, you can see the tab has the icon. So I think that was worth it. We have a nice little icon now. And again, because the UI is so simple, we'll focus on details like that. For a space in the stream electronics, we'd almost like to be able to turn that into a usable, which we can with the SVG, a usable icon inside the application as well. But with that done, I think that's a nice place to wrap up this one. We now have the icon, we have the basic app running. And next up, I think we can probably focus on the UI itself. Let's get the UI fleshed out, or I might just export all the other icons as well and get the buttons done. But I'm thinking just go for the UI first with buttons with text in. So that's it for this one, guys. I'll catch you in the next.